Children, this story has nothing to do with butterflies, but I love this story. And the O is like ostrich or octopus. So the story is called Dogger. The author and illustrator, she did both the words and the pictures, is Shirley Hughes. And I have always enjoyed reading this to my own children. And I hope you will enjoy this story too, about a boy and his most special stuffy. So maybe you can think of what, if you could only pick one of all your stuffies that's your most favorite, I wonder what it would be. We've gotten to see a lot of them at show and tell and even on our Zoom classes, but what would be your favorite? Dogger by Shirley Hughes. Once there was a soft brown toy called Dogger. One of his ears pointed upwards and the other flopped over. His fur was worn in places because he was quite old. He belonged to Dave. Dave was very fond of Dogger. He took him everywhere. Sometimes he gave him rides in a wagon. Sometimes he pulled him along on a leash made of a string like a real dog. When it was cold, he wrapped him up in a bit of blanket. Now and again, Dave's mom said that Dogger was getting much too dirty. She showed Dave how to wash him in a bowl of soapy water. Then they hung him up by his tail on the clothesline to dry. See him going there. He's been washed. Now he's going to dry. Dave's baby brother Joe liked hard toys. He liked putting them in his mouth and biting on them because he was getting teeth. Dave's big sister Bella took 7 teddies to bed with her every night. She had to sleep right up against the wall to stop herself from falling out. But Dave liked only Dogger. I think some of you have told me that you are almost falling out of bed because you have so many stuffies. One afternoon, Dave and Mom set out to collect Bella from school. Mom took Joe in the stroller and Dave took Dogger. Next to the school gate where the mums waited was a playground. Some men with ladders were putting up colored flags. Mom said there was going to be a summer fair to get money to buy things for the school. Dave pushed Dogger up against the railings to show him what was going on. Just then, the children started to come out of school. An ice cream van came around the corner, playing a tune. Bella ran up with her satchel flying. You guys wear backpacks. She has a satchel, which is more of a bag with a long strap. Mom, can we have an ice cream? Mom gave her the money for 2 cones. Joe didn't have a whole ice cream to himself because he was too dribbly. On the way home, Dave walked beside the stroller, giving Joe licks off his ice cream. Joe kicked his feet about and shouted for more in between licks. At supper, Dave was rather quiet. In the bath, he was even quieter. At bedtime, he said, "I want Dogger," but Dogger was nowhere to be found. Mom looked under the bed. She looked behind the cupboard. She searched in the kitchen and underneath the stairs. Dave watched anxiously through the banisters. Joe watched through the bars of his crib. Bella joined in to look for Dogger. She turned out her own toy box in case he was in there, but he wasn't. When Dad came home, he looked for Dogger too. He searched in the shed and down the garden path with a flashlight, but Dogger was quite lost. Dave was very sad when he went to bed. Bella kindly lent him one of her other teddies to go to sleep with, but it was not the same thing as Dogger. Dave kept waking up in the night and missing him. The next day was Saturday, and they all went to the school summer fair. The playground was full of stands and sideshows. This one says, guess the weight of the cake, the coconut shy. You get 5 balls. You have to try to knock down the coconut. This is a lucky dip and a tombola. So this has a lot of interesting details for you to look up. Maybe you've been to a fair or a school carnival, they sometimes call them. There was a fancy dress parade. Which costume do you like best? It says in the news. His outfit's made of newspaper. Then there were games with an egg and spoon race. They have to try to run without the egg falling off of their spoon. A wheelbarrow race. Did you ever do that with one of your siblings? You hold their legs and they have to walk on their hands. I used to do that. And a father's race. Do you think your dad would win in a father's race? Bella was very good at races. She won the 3-legged race with her friend Barbara. So they had to have so they stood beside each other, and then their middle legs, their legs that were touching, were tied together. So it's her one leg, their one leg together, and then her third leg. So it's called a 3-legged race. You really have 4, but 2 are tied together. So you have to make sure you're not losing your balance and knocking each other over. Wouldn't you like to go in for a race? They asked Dave. But Dave didn't feel like racing. Why doesn't he feel like racing? He's still missing Dogger. He was missing Dogger too much. So even though he's at this fun place and all these great things are happening around him, he's not having his best time. Then another very exciting thing happened to Bella. She won first prize in a raffle. It was a huge yellow teddy bear wearing a beautiful blue silk bow. He was almost as big as Dave. Dave didn't like that teddy at all. At that moment, he didn't like Bella much either because she kept winning things. He went off on his own to look at the stands, like the different booths that they had. So sometimes when we feel sad, we aren't very happy when other people are happy. So he was having a hard time being happy for Bella, but he did a good thing. He didn't yell at her or do something mean. He just went off to think a little by himself. That's what he needed to do to calm down. This says toys. It says books, 10 cents each. One lady had a toy stand full of knitted ducks and cars and baby dolls in bonnets. And there, at the very back, behind a lot of other toys, was, can you predict? Can you guess? What's he going to see? Dogger! He was wearing a ticket saying 50 cents. There were a lot of people around the stand. Dave tried to explain to the lady that it was his Dogger who had got lost and somehow been put on the stand by mistake. But, excuse me, but she wasn't listening. He looked in his pocket. He had 10 cents. Do you remember how much Dogger cost? 50 cents, right? 10. Does he have enough? No, he doesn't have enough. He had 10 cents, but that wasn't enough. He ran to find Mom and Dad to ask them to buy Dogger back at once. Dave went everywhere in the crowd, but he couldn't see Mom and Dad. He thought he was going to cry. At last he found Bella by the cakes. When she heard about Dogger, she and Dave ran back to the toy stand as fast as they could. Do you think they'll be in time? Do you think he'll get to buy Dogger back? But something terrible had happened. Dogger had just been bought by a little girl. She was already walking off with him. Dave began to cry. Bella ran after her and tried to explain that Dogger really belonged to Dave and could they please buy him back? But the little girl said no. She said that she had bought Dogger with her own money and she wanted him. She held on to him very tightly. Dave cried and cried. Is that what you would do if that happened to you? Would you feel so very sad? And the little girl started to cry too. But out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Bella's big yellow teddy. She stopped crying and put out her hand to stroke his beautiful blue silk bow. Can you imagine what might happen? Then Bella did something very kind. Would you swap this teddy for my brother's dog? She asked. Right away, the little girl stopped crying and began to smile. She held out Dogger to Dave, took the big teddy instead, and went off with him in her arms. Then Dave smiled too. He hugged Dogger and he hugged Bella around the waist. Thank you, Bella, he said. That night, Dave had Dogger in bed beside him. Bella was practicing somersaults. Will you miss that big teddy? Dave asked her. No, said Bella. I didn't like him much, really. He was too big and his eyes were too staring. Anyway, if I had another teddy in my bed, there wouldn't be room for me. What kind of sister is Bella to Dave? Do you have a brother or sister who is kind like that? Are you kind to your brother or sister? Do you show kindness to others if you don't have a brother or sister? Dogger. The end.